Studies Section 4, Philosophy, Concepts and Human Language. Introduction. This studies section will introduce you to the relationship between philosophy and language as two unique human enterprises. The studies section will attempt to answer the questions: in what sense is philosophy made possible by the evolution of language? What is the relationship between philosophy and language? Learning outcomes for study section 3. When you have studied this section, you should be able to understand philosophy better as an enterprise that requires linguistic capacity. Describe the relationship between philosophy and language. Philosophy better as an enterprise that requires linguistic capacity. The idea of what philosophy is and what it means is a problematic one simply because what philosophers do over the ages has shifted from one thing, idea, methodology, and argument to others. It is therefore difficult to say categorically which of these ideas of what philosophy is constitutes the real definition of philosophy. However, in spite of this fact, it seems obvious to everyone that whatever idea we may have about philosophy and what it means must of necessity be encapsulated in language. In other words, language serves as the immediate channel through which we must articulate whatever ideas, doctrines, arguments, and beliefs we may have. Just as you saw in Study Section 1, philosophy and philosophers trade in ideas and arguments, and in doing this, they seek to achieve understanding of the concepts and ideas they argue for. There has always been a serious distrust of and fascination with ordinary language by philosophers. On the other hand, we have philosophers who strongly suspect and antagonize what Nietzsche calls the seductions of grammar. This implies that language has a way of pulling us in certain directions that prevent us from getting a glimpse of what the universe is really like. Thus, according to these philosophers, if you trust the way you look at the world through the language of your daily lives, you are bound to be misled. These philosophers therefore took it as a challenge to scrutinize ordinary language and challenge its assumptions and presuppositions. On the other hand, we have philosophers who argue that philosophy has gone too far away from common sense and ordinary language. This neglect, according to them, is what led to first philosophical problems. Language therefore provides two immediate functions for philosophers. The first function is that philosophers employ language for clarification purposes. This is important because many non-philosophers regard philosophy as an obtuse and obscure enterprise which cannot achieve understanding because of its esoteric and vague use of language. Everyone wants to achieve clarity about what she or he wants to say. This is more so for philosophers because the philosophical enterprise is a critical analysis of human ideas and beliefs. This requires a command of language if philosophy itself is to be possible. In other words, if we consider philosophy to be the love of wisdom, and if wisdom serves as a guide to living a meaningful life, then it takes little reflection to see the significance of language to that task. Without language, then philosophical understanding is practically impossible. Language thus assists the philosophers in the task of opening up new ways of understanding the universe and human existence. A.J. Ayer captures this importance of language to philosophy when he remarked that a philosopher who has no mastery of language will be as helpless as a mathematician who could not handle numerals. 1969, 409. For Oladipo, this pursuit of clarity essentially leads to the pursuit of meaning. This, for him, involves the clarification of thought by analyzing the meaning of the concepts or terms through which we express our ideas and values and determining the real sense of our propositions. 2008, 22. This is significant because human beings think with words. This makes thought and the analysis, clarification, interpretation of thought important. Such an analysis or clarification involves the words we employ in expressing the thought or idea or the concepts that compose the thought. Scruton explained that the fundamental philosophical question is the question of meaning. We must analyze the meaning of our terms, that is, the concept expressed by them, in order to answer the questions of philosophy. This explains why the results of philosophy are not merely scientific results, and also why they seem to have a kind of eternal or necessary truth. When a philosopher asks, "What is a person?" he does not seek the particular facts about particular people, nor the scientific truth about people in general. He wants to know what it is to be a person. What makes something a person rather than a mere animal, say. Hence, he is asking what the word person means. In this way, therefore, philosophy seeks to make our thought clear by clarifying the concepts and words we use in expressing that thought. This task also has an advantage for the study of language. This is because such a linguistic analysis also assists us in the precise and concise use of words. In other words, the clarification function of philosophy also leads to the interpretation of language itself. This is the second function language provides for philosophy. If words and concepts must be meaningful in appropriately representing thoughts and ideas, then our words, terms, and concepts must be adequately purged of vagueness and ambiguity. It is in this sense that philosophers believe that language, properly analyzed, can yield an understanding of the world. This therefore means that if we want a new way of thinking about the world, we must take the challenge of refining, elaborating, interpreting, and expanding our grammar. We must make language elastic enough to deal with new experiences about the world. In 2003, Judith Butler explained that, "I think there is a lot in ordinary language and in received grammar that constrains our thinking indeed about what a person is, what a subject is, what gender is, what sexuality is, what qualities can be, and that I am not sure we are going to be able to struggle effectively against those constraints or work within them in a productive way unless we see the ways in which grammar is both producing and constraining our sense of what the world is." This tells you that apart from using language as a means of expressing meaning, philosophers take language itself serious as a subject matter. Philosophy attempts to free human understanding by critically examining everyday language and how that language conceives the world and reality around us. Relationship between philosophy and language. In describing the two tasks of philosophy in relation to language, concepts become critical in the philosopher's attempt to clarify words. Much more than this, concepts are fundamental to human experience and the evolution of language itself. This therefore proves that philosophers in clarifying language are constantly clarifying concepts. The idea of conceptual analysis seems therefore to be a natural extension of clarification. Conceptual analysis is critical to a philosopher's interpretation of human experience, and concepts play a serious role in the organization of these experiences. Table 4.1 Definition of concept. Explanation of concept. 1. John Locke, the British philosopher, further clarifies this when he defines a concept as a general idea that is created by abstracting or removing the uncommon characteristic from several particular ideas. 2. Wikipedia also considers it as a cognitive unit of meaning, an abstract or a mental symbol sometimes defined as a unit of knowledge. 3. The Encounter Dictionary sees it as a broad abstract idea or a guiding general principle, e.g., one that determines how a person or a culture behaves, or how nature, reality, or events are perceived. The remaining common characteristic after the abstraction becomes the general idea or concept. The concept of red is that general idea that is common to all red things, apples, blood, and so on. The concept of cat signifies the family of lions, jaguars, lynxes, cheetahs, tigers, etc. Concept can also be subdivided, as in the case of humans, differentiating bipedal rational beings from animals, and furthermore, male and female, separating between a particular class of humans. We can better clarify what a concept is by differentiating it from the art of naming. When we name something, we ascribe an identity to that thing that differentiates it from something else. When we conceptualize, we bring so many things that share certain common characteristics or elements under one term. In the process of conceptualizing, we also establish a range of meaning. In other words, we define a sense through which we should understand the concept. Since concepts are critical elements of thought, they stand between our minds and the world. In other words, concepts aid our thinking about the world. It is from this character that we derive their essential importance. The first importance of concepts is that they enable us to apply our thought to our surrounding. If a person, for example, uttered the statement, "lions are killers," we assume that the person making that statement possesses the concept of lion and the concept of killer. And further, that the person is also able to use the concept in a number of ways, like lion can hunt in the night, or lions are strong, or lions are animals. In other words, such a person can combine concepts. Secondly, concepts allow us to categorize. With concepts, we are able to classify things in terms of the characteristics or elements they have in common. This capacity to categorize helps us to distinguish between the essential features of a thing and its inessential features. Thirdly, concepts allow for the growth and development of human knowledge. Knowledge can only grow or advance if we are able to analyze the multifaceted human experience and dissect it into categories. For instance, we can categorize between pleasure and pain, love and hate, husband and wife, heaven and hell, science and myth, humans and animals, cold and hot, and so on. On the basis of these distinctions, one can go further to make predictions. For example, if I possess a concept of hell, one can infer that it is hot. Thus, the concept of hell can extend one's knowledge since it already contains the idea of hotness. It is this capacity for conceptual awareness that makes philosophy and language essential for human understanding. Concepts are linguistic expressions that assist in the task of thinking meaningfully about our world. Conceptual awareness therefore signifies the philosophical capacity to understand the universe in its complexity and dynamism. In other words, The conceptual awareness that philosophy promise enables us to cope with the changing nature of the universe and still be able to achieve a level of understanding that will help us in living meaningful lives. Summary for Studies Section 4. In Studies Section 4, you have learned that 1. This lecture was concerned with the analysis of the relationship between philosophy and language. We saw that the most obvious link between the two derives from the fact that philosophical ideas depend on language as a means of conveying philosophical ideas and truths. 2. However, the relationship goes beyond this in two ways. In this first place, philosophers are interested not just in conveying their ideas about the universe and human existence, but also in communicating with as much clarity as possible. 3. A significant dimension of the philosopher's task of constructing and critically investigating our worldviews involves the task of clarifying the ideas and beliefs upon which those worldviews are based. 4. The clarification of ideas and belief becomes important in the overall task of achieving human understanding of the universe and of other people. The second way in which philosophy relates with language is that language itself is a field of study for philosophers. In other words, if language must properly achieve the philosopher's desire for understanding, then the linguistic meaning that is communicated in language must be critically studied. 5. We then went on to inquire into the idea of concept as an important idea in language and philosophy. This is because a concept is crucial to the function of conceptual clarification and even more critical to the evolution of language and human experience. We define a concept as a cognitive unit of meaning, a general idea derived from abstracting the general characteristic of several particular phenomena. 6. Concepts are important to human experience and to language because they allow for the categorization and differentiation of the universe. In other words, concepts allow us to make distinction between the different aspects of the universe. 7. Concepts aid human thought by allowing human beings to think meaningfully about their environment. Such thinking is facilitated by the fact that we know the difference between human and animal, male and female, day and night, hot and cold, pain and pleasure, love and hate, and so on. This is the end of Studies Section 4. Thanks for listening.